Alright, so let's go to the next question, which is World War II era. In the World War II era, what was a major reason for Jewish immigration to the United States? To seek guaranteed voting rights, which was universal suffrage, to escape famine, to seek better educational opportunities, to escape state-sponsored genocide.
State-sponsored genocide.
Right. Because remember, what was happening to the Jewish people?
They were dying.
They were dying, they were being put in concentration camps. So they were leaving Germany because they didn't want to be killed. So the next one. The next one, 15, so that one was J, 14 is J. 15 is a Ford Company assembly line. How did the process shown in this photograph enhance the automotive industry? So what does an assembly line does? Does it require only licensed workers to produce the automotive? That makes no sense, right? By ensuring high quality automobiles for consumer at high price. So if you have high price, are you going to enhance the automobile industry? So there's two. By developing a new design to test automotive safety standards. Doesn't say anything. So which one? There's only one answer it could be. A. By speeding up production of automobiles at lower cost. A assembly line basically is a way to speed up the process of manufacturing something. And if you speed up the process and have the same quality, you will lower the prices for people. So, by speeding up the production of automobile and getting a lower cost, you are getting the public vehicles. Okay, so number 16. In November 1942, the National War Labor Board adopted the policy of equal pay for equal work, which had not been a standard practice in the industry. What was the likely purpose of this National War Labor Board order? To prevent humans from discriminating? To weaken the Rosie the Riveter image? To double the output of equipment? To ensure fair treatment for women in the workplace during the war? Yep. So, equal pay for equal work. So that is a policy. Fair treatment would only be the one that would basically follow under that one. So 16 is J. So this is another one of those things that goes down. Gold standard, basically what the gold standard was this is kind of some of the questions that you're never going to hear about. But basically what the gold standard was, and prior to our time, if you had, the government had to be, if you had a dollar bill, you had to have a dollar in gold. So if you had $10 in bill, the government had to have $10 in gold. Yeah, so they would basically, that was called the gold standard. So if we had $5 billion in gold, we could have $5 billion. You couldn't have $6 billion, you couldn't have $7 billion.
Gold isn't taxed.
And then at the end, right now, we've no longer gone to this standard. So basically, what happened was in 1933, Franklin Roosevelt, the power to control domestic and foreign exchange, the whole movement. 33, suspends the gold standard, takes action to increase the money supply by changing the ratio of dollars. The Reconstruction Finance Corporation is authorized to buy gold at increasing prices. Congress passed the Gold Reserve Act, permanently fixing the value of gold relative to dollars. So basically, on this one, why was he doing all this? Does it talk about to ensure deposits in customer savings accounts? The same thing about accounts in there. Now, to increase government regulation of business, do we want government regulation to increase? No. To end speculation in the stock market. Doesn't say anything about stock market in there, right? Yes, destabilize the national economy. And that's a hard question. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. It's like you're looking at this one. What the heck? You'll probably never even see that, but those are the kind of questions that are in here, and that's why, like, when you read it, you eliminate the questions. This excerpt from a book written by a Norwegian man who immigrated to the United States in the late 1800s. The west by train on road and route not known to us. We saw mountains, which must have been the Alleghenies, and felt much depressed. Was that America? Have we been fooled? We expected to see flat ground with no timber or boulders to clear. When we came far enough to see that kind of country, our spirit rose again. The immigrants were relieved when they saw this type of land because they were expecting to work on a railroad, plan for gold, mine, plan for gold, wanted to build factories, hoped to establish farms. Yep. So when they came and they saw all these mountains, it's like you can't establish a farm. So when immigrants came in, remember we had the Homestead Act and basically the Homestead Act gave people land. And so the immigrants came in, they thought they were going to get land that would be easy to farm. So 8 is F. All right, number 9, page 19. In 2015, the New York City Mayor's Office reported that the city had recently accomplished the following: reduced carbon emissions by 1/5, upgraded building codes to prepare for extreme weather, added nearly 1 million trees and 6 million square feet of reflective rooftop to the city landscape. Which challenge promoted the New York City to take these actions? Which one? You said, which one did you say? Yeah. So, because when they're talking about this, increased threats to urban areas by foreign domestic terrorism. Does that say anything about terrorism? A widening gap of income level between socioeconomic groups. Are we talking about groups of people, poor and rich? Escalating costs about healthcare. Does that have anything to do with healthcare? Aging infrastructure. Infrastructure and pollution caused by highly population density. So that is D. Remember, if you get the word infrastructure, that means roads. That means infrastructure is what keeps a city going. Roads, bridges, stuff of that nature. Plumbing, lighting, electricity. That is infrastructure. And occasionally you need to make sure and redo some of your infrastructure. Like, how many times you see them redoing the roads? Yeah, because if you just left the roads alone, what would happen? It would be gone, especially in some of these areas, because it gets big holes, sinkholes, whatever. So you have to continue to repair your infrastructure. Okay, how did Bill Gates earn the title the world's richest man?
By creating social media sites.
By creating what?
Social media sites.
Ooh, did he create social media sites? Yes, by developing software.
Wait.
So-
Steve Jobs is cell phone,
Huh?
right?
Steve Jobs is
His cell phone.
his cell phone.
Okay.
Bill Gates is computer. So that would be, he became by having, he did software. Microsoft, yep. There you go. So that one is H. All right. Whoa, this one's kind of an interesting one. Civil rights description. Members arm themselves. Leaders enforce the use of nonviolence. Leaders work with existing laws within courts to increase the rights of African Americans. So, what they're saying in these boxes, you're putting people in order. Okay? What's the NAACP? National Association for Colored People.
Oh.
So which one would that fall under? C. So you would see that number 3 is number 3 there. So it can't go, if that one falls under there, it can't go into any other question. So it automatically, if you know one of these, that answers yourself. Members arm themselves to arm themselves, are willing to take necessary means to protect their homes and family. If you pick that one, what does that sound like? Members armed themselves and they were willing to take necessary means to protect their home and action. Black Panthers, they were the group that were trying to protect blacks from all the racial violence that was going on in the 60s. So if you know number one was Black Panthers, you can know C is your answer again too, because none of the other questions have Black Panthers as number one. So that's where if you know at least one of the three in some of these questions, you'll be able to answer it correctly. All right, so that one is, like I said, C. 22, absolute freedom of navigation upon the seas, outside territorial waters, alike in peace and war, except that seas may be closed and hold or part by international action for the enforcement of international covenants. President Woodrow Wilson, 14 points. Which of the causing underlining World War I was this provision of the 14 points intended to prevent?
G,
Blockades.
I remember.
Very good. It's not natural, it's not nationalism, militarism, it's not secret treaties, not talking about secrets there. It's not imperialism, it's blockades and an unrestricted submarine warfare. So very good. All right, oops, what do we got here? Oh, this is kind of cool. Skateboarding started in the late 40s and early 50s. Californians wanted to find a way to surf when the water was calm. The modern skateboard originated from attaching wheels to simple wooden boards that resemble surfboards. So, which of the following development is best illustrated by this information? Diffusion is correct. So diffusion of American popular culture. So this is a cultural thing. Diffusion means to spread. So if we're going and we're making it something large, it will spread. Now an interesting thing about skateboarding was in the 1970s, they had a major drought in California. And they had a lot of people with pools. So they ended up draining all these pools. So the kids figured out that the surface of a pool was great for skateboarding. And that's how skateboarding became a national phenomenon in the 70s, is because kids started figuring out how to do different things on people. They would actually sneak in people's backyards and skate their pools. And then it took off from there. So that's why part of how skateboarding became big. But 23 is a diffusion of American popular culture. So diffusion means you're spreading something. All right, 24. What was the most important diplomatic effect of the Declaration of Independence? It allowed foreign governments to recognize the United States. It forced Great Britain to trade with the United States. It required Great Britain to pay reparations. It allowed the United States to establish immigration quotas. There's really only one. So what is the Declaration of Independence? What did we actually do when we did that? We declared our independence from who?
Britain.
Okay, so what would that, so when we did that, what happened after that point?
Britain didn't like that.
Never seen that. Something.
So did it force Great Britain to trade with us?
No.
Because we went to war with them, right? The war was still going on, so they have to pay reparations. So you can take H out. It allowed the United States to establish immigration quotas. Not talking about that. So what is the only possible answer?
A.
What is it?
A.
She means,
Do you have?
Wait, what? I mean F.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I was like, that's not, hey, okay, you have one there? Okay, F, correct. It allowed foreign governments to officially recognize the United States. So in the Declaration of Independence, we declared our independence from England. This also was an official document that let every other country know that we are no longer associated. We're saying we're an independent country. And so that's why it is F. What role did the Supreme Court play in this declaration? George W. Bush declared winner of Florida's electoral college votes. So, if you look at this, is it D, the court ruled that literacy test. Did that have anything to say about literacy?
Yes.
Nope.
I just wanted to do about literacy.
What?
There's literacy right there. Literacy test.
No, does the newspaper
No, it
article.
doesn't.
The court determined the campaign contributions are a form of free speech. Let's talk about free speech. What place is, what state is named in the paper?
Florida.
So what two questions are A, B. So now, it declared winner of Florida's electoral college votes. So what does that say?
Votes.
Which one has vote on it?
Me.
B. So the full root on the constitutionality of the vote recounted in Florida. So just by knowing Florida and vote, you can eliminate all those questions and have B. And so what they're talking about there was, George Bush was like Trump. They lost the actual popular vote, but because of the way the the election is set up by the electoral college, they had to get it approved that they actually won. And so you can lose the election, the popular vote, and still win the election because of the way the system is set up. And so that was one of them that,
I need Raul Blanco.
all right. Number 26. This one's gonna be kind of hard. In 1884, Tom D. Hall was founded in a poor neighborhood in London. The primary mission of the hall was to offer services to those in need, but it also gave university students first-hand experience with the effects of poverty. Thus allowed students to develop practical solutions to further assist people in need. Many reformers in the United States soon adopted this model. The model was evident in the United States through the work of, so we're talking about helping out the poor, people in need. So, J, did it have anything to do with the railroad union?
No.
Did it have anything to do with the temperance movement? That's about alcohol.
Oh,
Okay. So now, did it have anything to do about protest? Nothing about protest. It's 1884, way before World War II. So what does that leave?
New immigrants.
Huh?
New immigrants.
Yep. H, Jane Addams and her program for new immigrants.
It's H, you said?
Yes. All right. Number 27. What action caused the United States to engage in a police action on the Korean Peninsula in 1950? So, if we associate 1950 with the Korean War, then what do we know? Was it the collapse of the government? Was it assassination of a political leader? We never talked about that. Did the South blockade North? Why would we get involved if they blocked it? So what basically happened?
Invasion.
An invasion. So we engaged in a police action because of an invasion in South Korea. Remember, North Korea, like North Vietnam, were communist countries that were working with China and Russia. We were working with South Korea, South Vietnam, and the reason we started in 1950s when the Korean War started was because they were trying to expand communism and they invaded the South. Now this one, Hanford, Washington, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Los Alamos, New Mexico. That's probably the one that you need to know the most. That would be the one that you would need to remember the most. Because if you hear Los Alamos, it's talking about this. Which technology advancement was developed in installations during these cities during World War II?
The atomic bomb.
The atomic bomb.
oh, really?
Yeah. So when you have a situation, if you know Los Alamos, if you have Los Alamos, you know that it's dealing with the atomic bomb. So that's H. So whenever you see that in something, it's something to do with the atomic bomb. The Knights of Labor and American Federation of Labor developed in response to decrease in the power of political machines. That says labor. Does that have, what has to do with labor? Okay, so there's two of them, right? Two of them, so you have A and C. So which one would it be? The Federation of Labor responds to the increase to protect workers' interests or the increased demand for skilled workers? It's a labor union. What does a labor union do? Protect. Yeah, that's very good. But there, you see, there's a lot of verbiage that's so unnecessary in these questions. It's like, that's why you gotta really take it slow, because you can miss things. So this one is showing President Theodore Roosevelt on Glacier Point, Yosemite Valley, California. Remember Yosemite in this question. So what was the most likely topic of discussion between these men? The limited power of major railroad companies, creating alternate maritime shipping routes, designating additional lands as national parks, reducing the influence of environmental lobbyists. Well, what is Yosemite? Have you ever heard of Yosemite?
Yes, I've been there.
What is it?
It's a park.
Okay, so what now? So now, which one? What's the answer?
No, it's a park.
That's H. So if you know Yosemite, you know all of a sudden that that's what it is. Yeah, I know Yosemite's cool. But once again, it's eliminating questions. All right, we'll go about 10 more minutes, and I'll give you a break. I'll give your brains a break. All right. We are going now to 31.
There's 68 questions on this.
A, I appreciate it.
All right, a term that originated during President Lyndon Johnson's administration described the perception of discrepancy between public statements and actual policies. So, discrepancy. So if you have a discrepancy of a perception, what does that tell you? Describe the perception, and it has the perception of discrepancy. So discrepancy is something that is going wrong. Okay? So if there's something going wrong and you're questioning it's what? Hawk mentality, it's credibility, it's living room war, flexibility response, which, if you're credibility. So once again, by reading one line out of there instead of the whole thing, you can kind of, once again, get what the answer is. So 31's B. All right, the next one is another chart, percent of voting age population casting votes in selected presidential elections. In 1964, there was 35.9 in Alabama, and 1968 was 52. So what do we know about all these? What happened? Did we have more or less votes between 1964? Do we have more votes in 64 or more votes in 68? 68. How did the Voting Rights Act of 1965 contribute to the changes shown in this table? Did it help reduce?
I don't know.
Did it increase state revenues? No, we're talking about voting. Did it increase, did it have anything with revenues?
No.
No. Did it increase the involvement of lobbyists? It helped voters determine educational policies on literacy tests?
H.
Which one is it? It's actually F.
How does that, they said reduce?
Yeah.
There's never reduce.
Okay, I screwed up on that one, that's right. Because I didn't read the whole question. It reduced discrimination. So when it reduced discrimination, it got more people to vote. Sorry, so there I was just reading the question. It's a F. It is F. See what I'm saying, how easy it is? If you read the question too fast, because I'm looking for those key words, so sometimes you just gotta be careful on those key words. All right. What was the effect of the Spanish-American War? So the Spanish-American War is we went to Cuba, and the Maine, that ship was blown up, remember we talked about that ship? And then we fought the war, that was a blowout, didn't have to take very long. But we ended up gaining what? A couple places, like what? Puerto Rico, Guam. We ended up gaining things from that war. So, does it have anything to do with shipbuilding?
No.
It was an economic effect. Did it have anything with demand for coal?
No.
Did the United States get direct access to additional national resources and overseas markets? Economic. Was there fair treaties established? So we're talking about economic. What do you see in that? What do you call a economic market? If you have an economic market, that means you are basically working with something. So you have a market economy, whatever the case may be. So if it's talking economic, you're talking about money, you're talking about something that's going to affect you economically. So natural resources and overseas markets will impact you positively. So 31 is C. Because it's not about shipbuilding. It says nothing about treaties. And it says there's nothing about demand for coal. So it has to be direct access to additional national resources. All right, number 34. President Obama awards President Medal of Freedom to first female Supreme Court judge. So, this one you kind of have to know the Supreme Court judge. You can eliminate one, probably. Yeah, you can eliminate Hillary Clinton right off the bat. You have to kind of know that it would be Sandra Day O'Connor. She is a Supreme Court justice today. But you'd have to kind of know that she is a Supreme Court justice. You can only really eliminate one out of there. But she was elected, she was put in place by Barack Obama. All right, let's see.
Yes, sir, can I move the issue?
Yes. All right, two or three more questions and we'll stop. All right, let's go to 35. Issues regarding the selection of U.S. senators prior to 1913. All senators were selected by state legislatures. Intimidation and bribery of state legislatures were often used to influence the selection. Deadlock legislation was often unable to select senators, leaving vacancies for several years. So we're talking about senators. We're talking about getting elected. Now, they said it was deadlocked, so people wouldn't be able to be chosen. So each party had a party convention in order to select senators. If it's deadlocked, that means A wouldn't work. Open primaries were used to limit the choice of senators who were confirmed. Once again, if you look through there, before 1930, the states elected the senators. Now, when you go voting, if you were going to go voting next week, do we vote for the senators now? Yes, we do. So, something had to change. So if we change something to the Constitution, it's called a what? Amendment. Which one is it? D. A constitutional amendment was ratified that required senators to be elected directly by popular vote. All right. Let's see. How did Brown versus the Board of Education decision influence civil rights movements? So the Brown Board versus Education, actually I'm just going to jump to this one. And the correct answer is H. The Brown versus the Board of Education, the Supreme Court determined that state laws required separate but equal schools, violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The decision in the Brown case provided a constitutional and legal basis for helping the civil rights movement strive for equality in other areas of life besides education. So basically what it was, part of the board versus education, if you were black in Poteet, we would have two schools. You would have a school for black people, and you would have school for the rest of the population. Okay, that's what you would have. So you would have, it's all across the country. You could separate people, but you had to give them supposedly the same resources. You had to give them the same thing. The schools were supposed to be just as good. Realistically, that didn't work. Black schools were not very good. And then Brown versus Board of Education came on, and that basically case said that no, you can't. Separate but equal is not fair. And so now, if you're a Poteet, you can only have one school. And the blacks and the Hispanics and the whites and everyone's gonna go to school together. And so that's why, so it provided a judicial basis for achieving equality in other areas. So it's H. So basically, when you're looking at it, influenced, it didn't eliminate, it didn't discourage, didn't guarantee scholarships, but it provided a judicial basis for achieving equality in other areas. Because this is about equality. This is about civil rights. So 36 is H. All right, let's do one more, then we'll get our brains a rest. All right. Years of statehood for selected states, 1889 to 1896. So the West is getting states all around this time, all right, in the 1880s. What factor facilitated statehood for the darker shaded areas? The introduction of barbed wire. Would that have anything to do with anything?
No.
The acceptance of Mormon by other religious sects. If you know anything about Mormons, they went in Utah, they weren't in those other places. The peaceful immigrant